Hi, this is Erik Larsen, and you're listening to the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.
Happy New Year, Cap fans, and welcome to episode 117 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Verbanis, and as always, I'm joined by the best gosh darn co-host out there. That's Mr. Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob, Happy New Year. How you doing?
Happy New Year to you too, Rick. How are you doing?
I'm on top of the world, huh? I'm on top of the world, huh?
I don't know what the heck that was.
You don't know what that is?
I don't know what that is.
That's probably because I'm bastardizing the song. It's a song called On Top of the World. And, well, hey, listen, it's the new year. It's 2023. So, it don't get any better than this, Bob. Right?
Here we are. This is the year.
Right? We're going into year 3 of the podcast.
Yeah.
And we got 2 Captain America titles out at the same time. We got a big crossover coming up with the Cold War. We have.
But this year though, we got flying cars coming, I hear.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna be putting people on Mars.
Yeah. All right, Bob, but you know what? Hold on now. We got to bring it full circle. Okay. My greetings to you always have something to do with the show. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And I always try to do a different greeting for you every time. I'm on top of the world, huh? I'm on top of the world, huh? All right. The name of the song is On Top of the World.
Huh.
It is by the band called Imagine Dragons.
Oh, okay. Right? I'm starting to figure it out now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have a special guest on today's episode, Mr. Erik Larsen, who for 30 years has been doing the character Savage Dragon. So I thought there's that. And then the first part of the name of the group is Imagine Dragons. And if you just jumble the words a little bit there, that's Image. And Erik Larsen helped, found Image Comics back in 1992. So, I mean, come on, how more apropos can you get?
You're right. And I know that listeners can't see this, but I see behind Rick there's like one of those cork boards, and he's got thumbtacks with string, and he's making all these connections, folks. He's making all these connections.
You don't want to see the pictures that I have of Bob, though. Why else do you think he continues to do this show? It's blackmail. It's called blackmail, people. But yeah, Happy New Year, Bob. Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Rick, I'm just trying to do better, man.
Do better.
It's just a general sort of resolution. I think there's a lot of areas I can do better, right? I feel like I took 2022 off. So
what?
Yeah, I felt like
you started a new job.
I know.
You were working 2 jobs at the same time.
Well, true.
It's
all true. It's true.
You did it. You did at least 3 episodes that you led.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's right.
They're my top 5 list.
Yeah. Which is, if I'm not mistaken, 3 more than I did the previous year.
I don't know about that. I think you're selling yourself short. You did at least 2.
300% improvement. So
well, it's funny
yourself, Rick?
You said do better. So that's a kind of a running joke in my family. I don't know how it started, but a few years ago. Now my son, he is a theater major, and he's graduating this year from college. Double major, so very proud of him.
That's
and awesome. He has a sister. I have a daughter who's 5 years younger, and I got married last year, but she's been around for a long time, and the kids have known her for many years, and so she's been involved in their lives. And I don't know how this started, but the expression break a leg?
Mm-hmm.
Somehow it got where my wife started saying, "Do better," and and like
I like
the
that.
joke is like we're
Yeah.
like she's gonna hold a sign up, in the audience, when he looks out, he's gonna do better. And
I thought you
so,
were going to say that your son told your bride that she could do better.
oh, that's true. I don't think it was just my son. I think it was her family, her friends.
I love that. The sign though. Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
idea.
do better.
I'm gonna adopt that one for Bobby's basketball games, my son.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. I do have a resolution, and it's the same resolution as I had this time last year, Bob. I want to lose 10 pounds.
On top of the 10 you lost last year?
Well, it kind of came back.
Oh, okay.
I lost it in time for the wedding. I lost most of it in time
Yeah.
for the wedding. And then a little thing called a honeymoon happened.
Right. Liquid weight.
Oh
Mostly,
my
right?
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of bad over the holidays. So, I need some motivation, Bob. I need someone to challenge me and I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm not doing it, man.
You don't have another colonoscopy scheduled?
I'm not having another one. I'm not due for another 4 years. So yeah.
So talk to you in 4 years.
I'm going to talk to me in 4 years. Yeah, no, we talked about this a couple episodes ago. Rick, I'm going to try to get in shape, but I'm not going to focus on losing weight this time. I do want to focus on improving my cardio.
Mhm.
I gotta put on some muscle mass. I feel bad, that clothes aren't fitting the way they used to fit. I know I'm getting older, right? I mean, that's to be expected. You gotta, at a certain point, you gotta like let go of, you got to lower the expectations from where you were. But I feel like I can do better, right?
Mhm.
And
That's the motto.
and you're right. I worked a couple jobs, in 2022, started a new job. I was still teaching, just a lot of running around. And I feel like I got to take a little me time, right? Little self-maintenance time. And that's what I'm going to try to do better on, is a little bit of self-care and taking that time to work out and relax a little bit.
That's good. I think you should do that. I totally do. All right, listeners. So I'm holding auditions for a new co-host.
One that can do better.
Send your Bob's apparently going to be doing a sabbatical. Send in your promo tapes to capcomicfans@gmail.com. All right.
But I sound so good now.
Oh, you do, Bob. Listeners, do you hear this? Bob, do it again. Say something about Reskel.
Oh yeah. He's one of my favorite villains, Rick. Who you say? Red Skull.
Mm-hmm. Now, what you're listening to, folks, is you, the listeners. Well, the patrons. Let's be honest. A certain amount of listeners, the patrons who support us on a monthly basis. You have gotten Bob a Christmas present, and he has a new microphone. In fact, he has the exact same microphone I have. So doesn't he sound just wonderful?
I do, Rick. I do.
Yes. All right. Well, we should take, this new microphone and use it the best way we possibly can. And that is talking with Erik Larsen and bringing him on. I want to talk to him about Captain America: The End. We just covered that last episode. So listen, if you guys are just joining this particular episode because you're like, I want to hear about Erik Larsen. Last episode, make sure you check that out. That is episode 116. We cover Captain America: The End panel by panel. And so if you haven't gotten that comic, shame on you. Go get it. But you can get it and then listen along and read along as we go through it. So that's last episode. So check that out.
Yeah. And you're going to want to do that before you listen to tonight's discussion with Erik, because, it's going to make it much more meaningful.
All right. Well, we've been making Erik wait long enough in the green room, Bob. Should we let him in?
Let him in.
Our next guest has been an artist, a writer, a publisher, and so much more for nearly 40 years. In his early career, following work for various fanzines, he was the penciler for several DC and Marvel series like Doom Patrol, Punisher, and Marvel Comics Presents. he started to get larger recognition with his work following Todd McFarlane on the Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man series. And then he joined McFarlane, Jim Lee, Mark Sylvester, Wills Portacio, Jim Valentino, and Rob Liefeld to launch Image Comics in 1992. His creation, The Savage Dragon, has been ongoing for the last 30 years, making it the longest-running full-color comic book to feature a single artist writer. However, our listeners may be most excited about his Captain America The End one-shot that came out 3 years ago, where he wrote and illustrated the imaginary story of Captain America's final battle. We are pleased to have Erik Larsen as our guest. Erik, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we love having you. And by the way, Happy New Year.
Oh, wow. It's all so different.
I know, right? One thing after another. Well, a couple of years ago, you did a long interview with the fine folks over at Comic Book Historians, and they did a 3-part podcast series taking the listeners through your entire career, from your early fanzine work with Megaton all the way to 2020. And so I encourage our listeners to check that out, because today we're going to be focusing more on your Captain America story. But before we get into that, perhaps you could take the listeners through what got you into comics and how you broke in.
Well, I read comics as a little kid. My dad collected comics when he was a little kid, so we grew up with his old comic book collection, and that was stuff from back in the 40s, 50s. And so I kind of grew up with comic books. They were always a part of my existence. I drew a lot as a little kid, and I started drawing comics for my own entertainment when I was real little. And I started just creating my own characters and stuff like that. Eventually, it got to a point where I was like, I want to break into comics. I want to be a comics guy. There's a company called Charlton Comics, and they were on their way out the door. Their company was floundering, but they did a book called Charlton Bullseye, with the idea that we'll pay you no money, but we'll publish whatever you get to keep your copyright, keep ownership of your characters, and just do something for us, please. we'll have something published. And so I was like, oh, I've got these awesome characters. I'm going to do a story for that. And I wrote and drew a 24-page dragon story, Savage Dragon, back before there was Savage Dragon. And then he let me know, yeah, that book didn't sell well either. We can't even publish it for nothing. But we think your stuff's pretty good, so you should consider submitting it to other people. And what I ended up doing is I ended up self-publishing a fanzine called Graphic Fantasy and put that story in there. I had a couple other buddies who did stuff in there, and I inked like all of it. And we put out this thing and sent it out to anybody who would say anything about us. And a couple guys who wanted to publish their own comics contacted me after having bought it through the mail. And that was how I got in. And it was, you just work your way up the food chain from there. So I was 19 when I published that thing. And, within a few years, I was doing stuff at Marvel and DC and stuff. But it's one sort of thing sort of led to another. I met Jim Shooter fairly early on, and we talked through doing a Hulk versus Thor story. And then once I'd drawn that, I had the greatest samples in the world, because it's exactly in my wheelhouse. It's two characters kicking the crap out of each other. And that led to me doing the DN Agents over at Eclipse. And then I did a fill-in on Amazing Spider-Man pretty early on. And then at some point I met Mike Gold, who was championing my stuff over at DC, and I ended up on the Doom Patrol after doing a bunch of fill-in stuff. Led back to Marvel. Went over and did the Punisher. Was offered that as a gig, and I barely could manage. I was not a comfortable fit on that book. So I managed 5 issues, and then eventually wound up on Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, and then the rest they say is history.
Yeah.
So going back to your love for comics when you were a kid, and you got to go through your dad's collection, wow, from the 40s and 50s, some amazing stuff. But then you moved from that to picking up your own comics in the mid 70s.
Yeah.
And I heard you mention you were getting Kirby's run on Captain America
Yeah.
during that period. Is that where you developed your love for Jack Kirby and your appreciation for the Captain America character?
Well, I had bought his stuff sporadically at DC because he was doing Commandy, and he was just kind of winding things up over there. So when he came over to Marvel, that was my opportunity to be like, oh, I'm all in on this dude. I'm gonna get everything he touches over at Marvel. Because at DC, I didn't really get all the Commandies. I didn't see them all, but that was my introduction. So that was the gateway. And then when he was doing Marvel stuff, I was like, oh, this is awesome, because he's doing all this stuff on these characters that I know and love already. But I was not a Captain America reader prior to Jack coming back, because there's other people were working on it. It was who was it? Frank Robbins, I guess it was, just wrapping up his run. I think I bought the issue before Jack came on, just so I'd be like, okay, where's everything at? What's the state of affairs? And then when Jack came on, I was totally ready for it.
What was it about Jack Kirby that you just appreciated so much?
Well, he's a great action artist, and I always like that's kind of what I like to do, is draw figures jumping around. He also has this kind of boundless imagination in terms of just either composing panels or just making up wacky stuff. So I just embraced it. I loved everything he did. I bought Captain America, the Eternals, Black Panther, Devil Dinosaur, all that stuff. Yeah, I was stoked when he came on. Or Captain America's Bicentennial Battlers, and he did a couple annuals.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap, man. Everything's awesome.
Yeah, talk about wacky stuff. That's when he created Arnim Zola and all those creatures. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was so much crazy cool stuff in that.
So for those on Facebook, they can sometimes see you in the comic book original art groups. And that's how we met. You commented on my one and only Jack Kirby page from Captain America 211, which was from 1977. And are you lucky enough? Do you own any Kirby artwork?
I've got like 200 pages, dude.
Wow.
In fact, I've got a double page spread from that issue of Captain America on my office wall.
Do you now?
It's right. Yeah, you can't see it because I have to change. I don't know if I could turn my.
No, it looks like it's working.
My monitor enough to see. Not quite. Not quite. I can't.
What a tease.
Can't make the corner here.
Yeah.
Can I? No, I can't. Can't do it.
Well, I'll have to pull out that issue.
There it is, right in the corner.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh, that's nice.
Nicely done.
Right.
Framed and everything.
Okay.
So do you have what you'd have 200 pages? Wow.
A lot of complete issues. Various collectors had bought stuff from the Kirbys, and they had kept it all intact. So I've got like 8 issues of Commandy. I've got an issue of The Losers. I've got the Eternals annual, and then a bunch of just loose, random pages.
Do you have any favorites?
Um, yeah, there's a cover of Jimmy Olsen that Neil Adams inked,
Oh,
which
wow.
is super. It's really awesome.
Two
I
legends
always
right
like-
there.
Yeah, I always like that combination, and it's just a cool cover. So that I think is up there. But there's a run on Commandy where he rides around on this giant grasshopper called Click Clack. And I've got all 4 of those issues. So it's pretty awesome.
That is awesome. I mean, like, I have a very, very small original art collection and mostly focuses on Captain America.
Yeah,
But
as I would expect.
yeah, I gotta tell you, it makes life easier when you're super focused on one thing.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'd be out of a house right now. But most of my stuff is framed up on the walls. I have some things in portfolios, but I'm a believer that art should be seen, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it shouldn't be hidden away. And
Yeah.
and I hear the amount of art that you must have just
Well, I keep it in
sitting.
portfolios so
Uh-huh.
that I can read it like it's a giant comic book.
Oh man, that must be so cool.
So that does work.
Yeah,
Um,
those complete issues, that must be a lot of fun reading those.
yeah, no, that's awesome.
Um,
It's that and just other comic art from other people that I like. I mean, my real early dabbling with Marvel, my first stuff was Herb Trimpe's run on the Hulk,
hmm,
and that was like I love that stuff. So I've got 3 issues of Trimpe Hulk art there somewhere.
wow, that's impressive. Uh, so you had a chance to meet Jack Kirby, didn't you? Early
Yeah,
on in your
but
career.
yeah, a couple times I was always introduced to him as, hey, there's this up and coming young guy, you know, meet him. So, but we didn't have anything remotely like a meaningful conversation on anything because it was always in a convention kind of setting. So it was
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm a big fan kind of thing. And then just like, you kids or blah blah blah, whatever. And it's like I don't have any awesome quote or anything like that.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
turning our attention to Captain America: The End. I'm curious how you got this gig because previously the End stories were known for bringing back creators associated with the characters. So
Yeah.
Peter David and Dale Kuhn came back for
Mhm.
a Hulk End story. Chris Claremont for X-Men. Paul Jenkins for Wolverine. Garth Ennis for Punisher. How did
Yeah.
Erik Larsen get Captain America?
Well, it came because Jordan D. White, the editor, was putting it together and he knew my stuff from Savage Dragon. So he is a fan of that. And he knew I was a big Kirby guy and he knew I liked Captain America, I guess. So he was trying to think outside the box and be like, well, it would be nice to do something of a Kirby-esque thing, and let's get this guy to do it. So he just thought I'd be a good fit.
And how long did you have to think about it?
Not very long. But I mean, it's a big commitment because I'm doing my regular book at the same time. So it was like, hey, can you throw 30 pages on top of that? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
holy crap. I know, man.
Well, was it a tight deadline? Like, how long did it take you?
It took me, I don't, it wasn't done consecutively because it'd be like I'm working on a few pages of this and then I'm back on Savage Dragon and stuff like that. So it took me a few months, but that's because I was working on other stuff.
If we could talk about Jack's influence on your work in the end, because the book reads like a love letter to Jack's mid-70s work. I mean, from the writing
Yeah.
to the layouts to the battle scenes.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to have it, I can't rip off Jack. I can't emulate him to the extent where it's indistinguishable from the real guy. So
Mhm.
I knew that was an impossibility, but I can do something that has something of that flavor. And so I was like, okay, well, I've got to use the grid. I've got to use that 6-panel, 4-panel uniform grid that Jack used throughout his career. So that I came in with going, well, this I know I need to do.
Uh-huh.
And then in terms of like what Captain America looks like, I'm like, well, I'm going to use Jack's version of the costume, not whatever, there's the new ones where he's got belts with all sorts of pouches and
Mhm.
nonsense on it. And then we got to draw the chainmail so that it
Mhm.
looks like, chicken feathers or whatever. So I didn't want to, I didn't want to go crazy with that. I liked how Jack had it where the scale mail would be on his chest and then it miraculously would transition into being cloth with there being no seams at all. I
Mhm.
was like, that's what we can do in comics. We don't
Yeah.
have to do anything, That's the magic of comics is you can do that and it looks fine. Whereas if you try to do that in a movie, you'd be like, what the hell? That's not cool at all. Um,
Yeah, talk about the layout. You also had this one page that's 9 panels, all the same size, and where Cap's battling in each panel. And it looks like
yeah,
it was a lost page from Jack's Cap stories and Tales of Suspense.
yeah. That was the idea was to go, okay, well, there was a pretty famous page in Tales of Suspense. So I was definitely trying to go, well, I want to do something that's similar to that without swiping any poses. So that was kind of the thought was I just want this to feel like it's a Jack Kirby thing, even though, clearly Jack's not working on it. But I want to, he's going to look like he's an older version of Jack's Captain America and set it in a world that kind of feels like it without, 100% nailing it just because I'm incapable.
Well, I want to follow up on that because we did the previous episode. We reviewed this story panel by panel, Bob and I, and one of the things that came up was the revelation that he the first time you see him without his mask and you see the receding hairline, you see it's got white hair, the wrinkles around his eyes, and so with the super soldier serum, it kind of delays his aging, so it's like, wow, is this story that far in the future where Cap's kind of aged, or did something happen with the serum? Are we thinking too much into this? Like, we're trying to figure it out.
Well, I mean, I was thinking, like Commandy was a post-disaster world, and yet, in a lot of ways, it was post-disaster as though the disaster happened in the 70s because, people aren't running around with cell phones. On the other hand, there were, he went to Chicago, which had been turned into a mechanical world. So it's like, okay, well, there's some aspects of this that are futuristic and some that really aren't. I tried to straddle it so that I didn't want it to be, people driving around in flying cars and it to be totally divorced from the world we know. But it could be. I mean, basically, the idea was that Red Skull's he's I don't know what you call that mist that he puts in people's face that make them turn into a version of the Red Skull. But the thought was that Cap had been exposed to it a little bit here and there over the years, so that he had become immune to it, and the rest of humanity wasn't immune to it. So when that mist was sort of all over the place, everybody started turning into Red Skulls all around him. And there was a handful of humans that somehow managed to not get infected. And so he's trying to find humanity and rebuild the world. And we just that was the jumping off point. Like, okay, let's see how this works. How that would actually function is I didn't really go into. Like, are there still farmers? How are these people able to eat? What's going on here?
Right.
And canned food, right? Yeah. So if we could shift gears from the art to the story and dive a little deeper into that, because it's such a fascinating story, and we really loved reviewing it, and I know the listeners are going to love revisiting it again, because it has been a few years since it came out. But in early on in the book, one of the Red Skulls taunts Cap, and he says, "You fight a war you cannot hope to win, Captain." And it turns out it might be true, at least in the way that the readers expect it to be won, right? By physical confrontation, slinging the shield. Is that one of the main points you were trying to convey in the story, that Cap's heroism isn't necessarily tied to his shield or his fists?
Yeah, well, that's it. Is, Captain America's a guy who is going to do the right thing always, or as close to the right thing as he's able to find, and that he finds a way. So, I mean, that's the beauty of Captain America, is that he will find a way. He's a very tenacious guy, which is, defining characteristic with him. It's like, I'm going to find a way. I will figure this out this week.
So speaking of that never die attitude, right? Near the end of the story, Cap appears to be beaten. And one of the things, as you said, he's famous for is he never surrendering, right? Even the most dire of situations, there's always hope, right? There's still a way to prevail. Yet, hope escapes him at the end. He begins to believe that he isn't the solution, but rather maybe he's the problem. And he's the one person standing in the way of peace. He's the monster. But the little girl.
This is me ripping off I Am Legend here.
There you go. Right. Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't catch that, but yeah.
It's basically, it's a riff on I Am Legend, which is, he just, in that, he kind of goes, everybody's a vampire. And at some point he kind of realizes, holy crap, I'm the problem. I'm, everybody's a vampire. Now I'm the monster because I'm the guy who's out killing all these things.
But the little girl that's with him, Marcia, she snaps him out of it at the last minute, and he begins to fight again. And so, just what are we to take from this crisis of confidence, and in this, that a small helpless child is the one that is able to, renew his faltering faith in himself?
Isn't that the way it always works? That's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
You always have that one person that's like, I believe in you, Cap. Oh, okay. I love those stories, because it's always, you have those crisis of the heart or whatever. It's like, when things look the darkest they can be, somebody's in there going, I believe in you. It's like, okay.
What's the Adam Sandler movie where the guy keeps coming out? You can do it.
You can do it.
You need that sometimes. You need somebody who's in your corner, who's pulling for you.
Absolutely.
And, giving them a reason, giving them something to fight for.
One of the other things I was really fascinated. I hate to sound like, one of those critics who like goes to the movies and, watches the movie and says, oh, this is what, the director was trying to convey, and I had no idea what you're talking about. It was just, an entertaining piece. But, I was fascinated by this suggestion of a hive mind, right? This linked consciousness, assimilation, the loss of individuality. And towards the end, Cap recognizes it for what it is. It's the impulse of the Red Skull to kill everyone who's different. Infect if they can, kill if they can't.
And that's
right?
the whole Nazi thing too. It's like, we all have the same thought. We're all walking in literal lockstep in that case.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, it is a common human experience, right? The fear of the different and the other. The desire to either assimilate it and make those differences go away, or to push it outside the circle. Is that a deeper meaning to this
Yeah,
story?
no,
Or am I
that's,
just, reading
no,
what I
you
want to
got
read?
it. You got it. That works for me.
Yeah.
Nailed it, man.
All right. So speaking of the hive mind, you and I'm going to get back to the art. You beautifully demonstrated this hive mind early in the story by using this double page splash. So this gets me thinking back to Savage Dragon #7, where you did an entire issue with nothing but splash pages and double page splashes. Can you talk about your philosophy when it comes to splashes and double page splashes and how writers and artists approach them?
Oh, in terms of that, I
Yeah.
think I mean, a splash page and especially a double page spread, uh, those are showstoppers, you know. In a movie, you can't do anything like that, but it's one of the few tools that we've got. The problem with comics in general, when you're telling a story, is that you can always see ahead because you're sitting there, you're flipping the pages, and you can see multiple panels. So if Red Skull's showing up for the first time on a right-hand page, and you're sitting there looking at the left-hand page, your eye is going to be drawn over to this bright red thing that's on the other side of the page. And you're able to spoil your own story just because of how pages are placed and how panels are placed. So as a creator, as a guy making this nonsense, I'm sitting there consciously aware all the time that this can happen. So essentially what I try to do is to pace my stories so that left-hand pages are a reveal, right-hand pages are cliffhangers, and do it like that. And I can't control it quite so much at Marvel where they can plug
Place an
ads,
ad or something.
you know.
Yeah.
But you can do it a little bit by going, okay, well, I'm going to stick a double page spread in here. And the beauty of a double page spread is it's you can't jump ahead. It takes up both sides of the page, and it is definitely like we're in the moment, and there's a lot to look at generally speaking. But I think of splashes as those have got to be big moments, which is why doing an issue which is all splash pages or all double page spreads uh, can be a real challenge because you want every moment in there to be quote unquote worthy of being that, you know, because if you just do splashes of nonsense, it's like, well, why is this taking up all this real estate? This would be much better off if there were multiple panels telling me more information. So when I'm doing a splash, I want there to be a lot of visual information there for you to just be able to go, oh, I'm getting all this stuff out of it.
Well, yeah, and I'll just point to this particular issue, right? So you talked about you have your reveals on the left or cliffhangers on the right, and it did flow very well, right? There's there's the helicarrier reveal, right? There's like a 3 or 2/3 page splash, that was on the left, and then the MODOK was a big reveal, but then there's also the other one was when you just did a bust of Steve Rogers where he the light goes off and it dawns on him that it's me, right?
Yeah.
And there's no action, there's no detail, there's no those types of things, but it's a moment. The story
Yeah.
itself is a moment.
Yeah. It's got some significance. It's got some weight to it. And I think that's another thing where you go, yeah, this is important. You know, something being a splash, that's an important moment. And that's, you know, yet another way of doing stuff. You can do a full page of somebody's head, but it first should look interesting if you can find a way of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And second, it's really got to say something. And if it's some character going, oh crap, I'm doomed. Um, I like how he's just got a real tired, kind of haggard look on his face where he just feels really defeated at that moment. And has that like, oh my God, it's me, I think that face shows a lot.
It did. It really did. It captured the whole feelings that were going on through his head at that point, that desperation slash realization. But I want to get back to the MODOK splash, because I think this is my favorite, that kind of just screams Kirby, right? Because you have this gigantic MODOK that's been turned into Red Skull, right? So you have big Red Skull MODOK. You have the Kirby crackle going on behind him as he's like, hooked up to the machinery there, and it's a huge revelation. But okay, it's a spectacular splash, but I have to ask, was this partially inspired by the Mike Zeck John Beatty cover?
It was not. It actually wasn't. I know that I had read that stuff years ago, so maybe it was in the back of my skull somewhere, my own skull.
No pun intended.
But I completely forgot it, and then after the fact, after it had been published, then I was looking through some Captain America covers, and I was like, "Holy crap! They beat me to it! I forgot. I totally forgot about this."
Yeah, for the listeners who may not know what we're talking about, it's Captain America 289 from 1983. It was the Assistant Editors Month parody cover, and
they were all doing wacky stuff, and they combined Red Skull and MODOK.
They called him Mo Skull.
Mo Skull, yeah.
Mo Skull, yeah.
That's awesome.
So while we're on MODOK, despite the overwhelming and growing odds against him with every new assimilation, Cap can't bring himself to kill those who've been afflicted by this NIST virus, right? I mean, he's confident that there has to be a cure. And yet in the end, I mean, he does kill the infected MODOK, who is the hub of this hive mind, right? And the narrator of the story says, the soldier does what he must, as painful as it may be. Now, since the Silver Age, at least, Cap rarely, and with rare exceptions, resorts to lethal force. And when he does, it's not a choice he takes lightly. I mean, all the way back, right? You Captain America 321, when he shoots the ultimatum agent to save the hostages, he wrestles with that, right? He carries that burden.
I mean, but at the same time, he is a soldier, so he does act like a soldier at times when push comes to shove, and it's absolutely necessary. So
but
he did do it lightly, but he's not Superman. Well, I guess Superman does these days too.
These days, right?
Never mind. But he is much more. He's more willing to kill than Superman.
Yeah. Did you wrestle with that narrative choice at all in light of? I mean, because some readers take that really seriously.
I knew he had to take it seriously. And I knew that, he was a soldier, and that is something he did. So I was aware of, him decapitating Darren Blood and doing other things at times when it was absolutely necessary, and it was absolutely necessary. So yeah, he did the right thing.
Did the only thing I guess he could, right? I mean, that's really the point of the story, right? Yeah.
At least he can restore people so that they're not all hive mind, groupthink kind of thing. So
yeah. So towards the end, Cap eventually learns that, or I should say, toward the end, he learns that his blood's the antidote for this Red Skull virus. And
he gave it to the girl, right?
Well, she got a transfusion. I mean, he didn't know that at the time.
No, he didn't know it at the time, but he did note that, hey, she's not changing like everybody else seems to be.
Well, he didn't realize that until the end. I mean, that sort of escaped.
I haven't read this thing in a while.
Yeah, he didn't realize it, right? I mean, that didn't really click. But earlier on when he did the transfusion, and the elder Jewish doctor it says, when she needs blood, and Cap says, "Oh, I'm a universal donor, right? Zero negative. I can do this, right?" And this got me thinking. Way back in episode 30 of our podcast, we interviewed Dr. Mark White. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Mark White, but he wrote a book called "The Virtues of Captain America: Modern Day Lessons of Character from a World War II." He's a professor at a university in New York, philosophy professor. In any case, he suggested that Cap's idea of the American dream and its ideals are cosmopolitan, right? They're not nationalistic. It's not America first. It's a universal idea that all people want to be free from oppression, exploitation, fascism, all those things. So is in a sense, Cap is the universal donor, right? Because his ideals are universal. Yeah. Is this an underlying current in the story as well?
Sure. At the same time, he was established as a universal donor. I did research it to find out what his blood type was so that it made sense. Because I was like, has this been established before? What his blood type is? So I did some research.
We did talk about that, right, Rick? I mean, we did ask, like, was this established before this story, or is this a sort of a new link in the chain? So it's interesting.
I don't remember where the hell I found it, but I did find it somewhere in my, because I always have to, you don't want to be making up stuff when you don't,
right?
Or contradicting, basically. You don't want to be contradicting what other people have established. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, God knows there's not going to be any comic nerds out there questioning everything you do.
It's tough. It's, when we were doing this stuff back in the good old days, you didn't have the internet, so people would just be screaming into the void. They'd have to write a letter.
Right.
Just choose not to publish that one.
All right. So I got another big question for you.
All right.
And so, I mean, for many years, anybody who's followed your work, right, we know that you've been a strong and faithful voice against fascist ideology. Sure. And ultimately, that's what the Red Skull and his army of converts is here, right? In fact, Cap characterizes the Red Skull horde as a fascist mob. So I can't help but see this story as a metaphor for something bigger. I mean, is that just something readers have to work out for themselves? The metaphor being in the eye of the beholder, or the reader in this case? Or is there some other social and moral lesson you're trying to convey here?
Yeah, I would rather just leave it vague and make people, because I think a lot of people who do have their messages have this tendency to lay it on with a trowel. And I think people can be like, I don't want to be preached to, because I think that can be off-putting. So I tried to dance around stuff and not be like, hey, I'm really talking about modern politics and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
What's going on in the real world, man? Pay attention. I'd rather that people get a lesson from something, and, story-wise, that it resonates in some way, and learn a lesson there without necessarily going, this is what I'm talking about, and this is, because that can be whatever.
Yeah, no, I get that, because honestly, the first time I read this, I was just entertained, right? I mean, back when it first came out, and then of course, we read it a few more times, and we reviewed it, and we really dug deep into it, and it hit me in a very different way.
Oh, cool!
3 years later,
now I gotta watch this. I gotta go listen to your other podcast so I can be all caught up on. Hey, people are talking about you, man. Oh, I had no idea.
We were talking a little bit before about, sometimes fans can be very, very nitpicky, right? So one of the things that I recall when this came out was at the end of the story, at the very bottom of the credits page, it states Captain America was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, obviously, that was incorrect.
And it's not correct.
Yeah, and the character was created by Joe Simon and Kirby. And that was a mistake on Marvel's part, and had nothing to do with you. No. But social media being what it is, you received some backlash for this, didn't you?
Yeah, whatever. I don't pay those guys much heed. It's like that's the one page in the book I didn't write. So, I can only do so much. I can't control what editorial does. And it's unfortunate that that came out that way, because that ended up overshadowing a lot of, the good stuff in the book.
Yeah.
Yet people are talking about this, and it's like, come on, man.
We had Tom Brevoort on from Marvel, and he, he kind of talked a little bit about that, of how prior to the internet, it was just, one or two or three guys going down to their local 7-Eleven, picking up stuff off the rack and arguing with each other about, well, Hulk should have never have done that. And this, and that was it. They were done.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
now you
And there
got
was, yeah, and you didn't know the personalities behind any of the stuff. It just kind of appeared miraculously, and also really at that point, I think in the 70s especially, people were much more conscious about, I am taking this over from somebody else, and I need to continue what they are doing and be a steward of this thing. And there was much more of a sense of, like somebody's handing somebody else a baton. Like, we're all running this marathon together, and when I get tired, I'm going to hand it to the next guy. But he's running that same race and taking those same characters and progressing what goes on. And you read some of those books, and they did a really marvelous job of picking up on all the story points that the guy before them had set in motion. And that was, I thought, a beautiful time in comics, really. And these days, I see less of that, and I see more of people just going, well, now I'm going to tell my story, and my story is going to be this. And my Captain America has a big nose, and my Captain America is shorter than everybody else. And like, no, you're not recasting the dude. The dude's, he's still supposed to be the same height and the same everything. And I know that I'm one to talk, because I've done some of these characters before, but I really feel strongly that you should be looking at whoever does a good job of doing those characters, and have it be like, no, I'm drawing the same dude. So when I'm drawing Captain America, I'm looking at, well, how did the creator make this guy look, and how do I have it so that it seems like I'm still drawing the same guy? Like when I'm drawing any of those characters, when I was doing Flash Thompson in Spider-Man, I'm looking back and going, well, what did he look like when he was introduced? Oh, he had curly hair before successive artists decided he should look like Steve Rogers. Let's go back to that. Let's try and find that unique face that a lot of these characters start off with, something that was really distinct and unique, and different from other characters. Let's find that face. Let's find the Captain America. It's like, oh, he's got a cleft in his chin, and his nose looks like this, and his eyebrows look like that. Okay, cool. Let's do that and have it look right. So when he takes off his mask, you go, yeah, that is Captain America.
I've heard you say before, in addition to honoring the creations that you just talked about, and trying to stay true to the creations, you've also talked about honoring the creators, right, that came before you. Because I've heard you talk about your experience when you were on Doom Patrol, and how your art style was so different from the creator before you. And then you learned a lesson from that and started to try to ease the transition between art styles and things like that.
Yeah. I think that is important. I think, well, it helped that I was more in tune with Todd McFarlane, and we both had something of a cartoony bent to our work, so that transition wasn't going to be as abrupt as the one on the Doom Patrol. but even so, I was not hedging my bets. So I was looking at it going, all right, so he's doing these funky panel borders everywhere, and Spider-Man gets into much more contorted poses than he had for a while. So let me do more of that. And I think that was it saved my life on that book, because that could have been some real backlash from people reading that. But if I was to do some Spider-Man stuff now, I think I would probably not do that so much. And maybe I would be like, oh, let me look back at what Steve Ditko was doing and try and do a more Ditko-y Spider-Man, just to see what that feels like.
So pulling back to, we talked about the, Captain America in the end, we had that under a microscope, but I just want to kind of pull back to a larger picture. Can you share your thoughts on what you feel like the state of Image Comics is currently, and your thoughts on the comic industry as a whole?
Well, I mean, Image Comics is a different animal from any of that other stuff, just because it's all creator owned. So anybody can do whatever they want to do. I'm doing a superhero book set in the quote unquote Image universe, but that doesn't mean anybody else needs to do that or has to do that. And they're just doing their own thing, which is, it's awesome. It's people can do whatever they want to, and there's no editorial interference of any sort. So it's a very different kind of animal than any other comic book company I've ever dealt with. Everything else, there's somebody over your head going, no, 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 you got to do this, or that character wouldn't say that. Here, you're in charge. If you made up the characters, nobody can say otherwise. And if you feel like I want my book to be aimed at adult readers, or I want my book to be aimed at children readers, that's totally up to you. So that part is great. In terms of the rest of the industry, I don't even know. I don't read every other book, so I don't have my finger on the pulse in terms of everything. And I don't talk to all editors. I just have a few people that I do talk to, and I go into the comic store every week like many other people, and I've never had a pull list. I just go in and pick out whatever happens to catch my eye. And so I read various things, mostly just kind of sampling this and that.
I guess I asked a question about the industry as a whole. I'm kind of thinking of a couple of years ago, I guess during the pandemic, you had some thoughts out there about whether or not the industry could continue, right? With Marvel and DC, were they going to continue, like, be able to do what they've been doing, or are they going to have to change their style? They're going to have to do reprints,
I don't know what's going to happen. You don't know until you get there. Certainly those reprints that they've been doing, those facsimile editions, those have been doing very well. Does that mean that at some point they could just go, well, we're just going to do facsimiles of the entire Captain America run. We're just going to start with issue 1, do a facsimile of that, and then do a facsimile of issue 2, and just have it. This is just going to go on for 75 years because we got a bunch of them. And they could very well just buzz through any series and just do it that way. And they probably do pretty well with it. So at some point, you got to wonder if one of the bean counters will wake up and go, hey, these sell really well, and we don't have to pay anybody. That's way better than paying a whole creative team and having an editorial and having all this stuff. Why don't we just do more of that?
Well, let's hope not, right?
Well, I think what might happen at some point, if they find that that is the case, that probably they'll go, but we could license this stuff out, and suddenly there'll be, Captain America comics from some other publisher, suddenly IDW is doing it, or
Hmm.
Dark Horse or Image or whatever. Somebody just be like, okay, well, I want to get the Captain America license because he is terrific.
Well, one thing that I would imagine you'll want to never see just go into reprints, and that is Savage Dragon. So, what's the latest with Savage Dragon? Where are we at nowadays?
I'm working on issue 263 and getting close to wrapping that one up. And then I'm working on a book called Ant, and that's been coming out too. So I'm 6 issues into that. And similarly, I'm pretty far on the issue 6 of Ant. So both of them will probably be wrapping up right around the same time as each other. And then I just keep on trucking for as long as I can stand it. And yeah, we just started reprinting the Savage Dragon in these hardcover books, so that's pretty awesome. Got this cool book that's just like, all right, do more.
Yeah, they're a
of
little
those.
oversized too. Yeah,
Yeah, it's oversized and it's got all sorts of sketchbook stuff in the back, and we
nice
Yeah.
bonus material.
yes, yeah, we went overboard. There's like 88 pages of sketches in the back of this thing.
Wow.
It goes on and on and on. It's like I hope people aren't totally bored by it, but I had a bunch of stuff, so here you go, gang.
Are you gonna have multiple volumes, like all?
That's the thought, is that
Mhm.
I'll just keep going with it and just do a couple of these a year. But it's got 13 issues in it, which just seems like kind of an odd number, but that's what Robert Kirkman was doing with Invincible, and he's doing that with all his books. So like, okay, if Ultimate Collection means 13 issues, I'm in. We'll do that. But even at that, it's like I'm on 260 something, so that's 20 books. It's
Yeah, it's gonna take a
a lot of
while.
volumes.
That's gonna take a lot of shelves right there.
That is going to take a lot of shells, and it's going to take a lot of time to assemble that sort of thing. Because putting together those kind of sketchbooks and stuff and finding all of the different pieces it takes some doing.
So what are the best ways for fans to follow you? I mean, I don't think you're on Twitter anymore, correct?
I am not on Twitter. I am on Facebook, and you just look for my bald head and my big hand, and hopefully there's just one of me.
Is that the Jack Kirby look where he's got the big
that's the
hand
Jack
coming
Kirby
out?
shot.
Did you do that on purpose?
Oh, sure.
Nice.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of comic booky. It's got the big dots on it and stuff. So yeah, I do use that. That is my uh what do you call it? That's my avatar on everything I do. And also I'm that on I'm always my own name on every single thing. So if I'm on Hive, I am Erik Larsen. And if I'm on Facebook, I'm Erik Larsen. And on Reddit, I think I'm Erik J. Larsen because somebody had taken my name, but
Bastards.
I don't use pseudonyms on any of these things because that can come back to bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
And then of course people can always go to savagedragon.com.
Yes, there's that, and we've got a wiki that talks all about all the characters and gives backgrounds on everything. It's quite extensive.
Yeah, I'm sure people will want to go and check those out. But listen, Erik, a real pleasure wrapping cap with you. Your excitement for Jack Kirby obviously came through in the book, and it was a pleasure talking with you about your influence and your love for the medium. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, that was a fun conversation with Erik Larsen. I will tell you, Bob, if someone had said to me, oh, you're going to be interviewing various Captain America comic book creators through over the decades. Oh, you're going to be interviewing Erik Larsen. I would have been like, what?
What?
You're
Yeah, right.
crazy. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? But yeah, he is now a Captain America comic book creator because he did the special at the end, and it was great talking to him about it. And again, it was so obvious that he had this tremendous love for Jack Kirby. It comes through in his work, and it was great talking to the different stories behind what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I love talking to him about the writing because, he wrote it as well. And there is a lot of love that shines through for Cap in the writing as well, and the story. And, I loved trying to pull a little bit out of him about some of the sort of the subtext of the narrative, and, fairly successful in that. But I think there's a lot deeper we could have gone on that. And, but I'll leave it up to the readers, to pick up that book, read it yourself, and let's see, maybe comment in the Facebook group or leave a message about what you got from that story.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. So check it out on the Captain America comic book fans Facebook group. All right, so make sure you come back next episode. We're going to travel to 1969. We're going to cover Captain America issue 120, which is written by Stan Lee with some art, awesome art by Gene Colan and Joe Sinnott. And you might remember the cover. It says "Crack Up on Campus," and there's it looks like a ne'er-do-well with I don't know, is he a hippie? He's got long hair and beard, and he's holding a man hostage. He's holding some square, Bob, some square.
Yeah, a
He's wearing a
suit.
suit and a tie,
Mhm.
right? And he's holding him hostage, and he's firing down on Cap as he's charging up the staircase. It looks like a bell tower over top of this college campus. So we're gonna take care of, we're gonna visit that one. The solicitation is, this will really shake you up. Cap becomes part of the college scene, and then the action starts.
That is how I envisioned my adjunct faculty career.
Yeah, didn't quite go that way.
Didn't quite go that direction.
All right. Well, maybe you'll share us little inside stories about
Yeah.
your early days as teaching, Bob.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
let's
Yeah.
save that for the next episode.
Okay.
All right. Well, as always, Bob, it's fun wrapping Cap with you.
It is. I cannot wait to do it again.
All right. He's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis, and you have been listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.